the next presentation by Martin Hamich and Matt Lenholt, which is TRIDEC Natural Crisis Management Demonstration for Tsunamis.
Good morning. So just let me shortly introduce my colleague Matthias Lenthold. He will set up everything that is required for the live demonstration. So we will have a short introduction with PowerPoint slides, and then we want to make a live demonstration of the system we have developed so far. We are currently working in a project which is called TRIDEC. It's an acronym for Collaborative, Complex and Critical Decision Support in Evolving Crisis. It's co-funded by the European Commission in the Framework 7 program, and it started in 2010. It will be finished in August 2013, and so there's still 1 year to go within the project. And we have 10 partners in the project, which 2 of them are very important for the regarding the tsunami early warning part in this project. TRIDEC itself focuses, so what's the challenge? TRIDEC focuses on new technologies for real-time intelligent information management and collaborative, complex and critical decision processes with a large volume of data and unconventional sensors. So when we are, for example, looking at early warning systems, we know scientific proven sensors like seismic networks, tide gauges, buoys for sea level measurement. But we are also looking, for example, for unconventional sensors, which might be social media, for example, Twitter, or other new sensors, as, for example, presented by Mr. Pryor on Monday. Another challenge is that we extend existing platforms, realizing a component-based technology framework for building distributed tsunami warning systems for deployment in the northeastern Atlantic, the Mediterranean and connected seas region. This leads directly to 2 of our partners, which are the first one, which is Query from Turkey. We have seen the presentation from Mr. Özcan Merkli on Monday. Mr. Omira from Portugal, the Institute Meteorologica, is not here, but he has also an abstract submitted to this conference. And these 2 partners are very essential in this project because they deliver the important user requirements, and they are important for the evaluation of the developed system. Another important part is that the developments in this project are based on 2 other projects. The first project is the German-Indonesian Tsunami Early Warning System, or shortly JITUS, which is providing a service platform for multi-sensor integration, so we call it the upstream. And we have a second project, it's called Distant Early Warning System, or shortly DEWS, which is providing service platform for warning dissemination, which we call the downstream, and regional communication of national centers, and also addressing interoperability matters. So we are looking on standards so that we can include other components and can consider other components that are standards based. End user requirements are very important. We have to meet end user requirements both from the Tsunami Warning Center and the Civil Protection Authorities point of view, so that a complex system can be produced in a flexible manner to address the needs of such end users. So we are in strong cooperation with Query and IM for that, and Query and IM are recognized candidate tsunami watch providers by the IOC, and they are closely related to the civil protection agencies within their national capability, and are among other the leading organizations within the NEAM TWS activities of the UNESCO IOC. For the within the project, we have 3 demonstrators from light, mid to heavyweight, so that's the system, and we use the system for evaluation, but of course for continuous and iterative improvements. We have seen this slide on Monday presented by Özcan, and I think it's important just to recognize that there have been some tsunamis in the Mediterranean and Atlantic. When we're looking at the eastern Med, we see that there are several tsunamigenic earthquakes during the 11th and 15th century, and you can see how the plates are, the motions of the plates. And when looking at at various earthquakes, you can see the different tsunamigenic zones. This is the input for so-called virtual scenarios. So that's our term for scenarios which can be historical scenarios, or which can be tsunamis that might occur in the future. And based on these tsunamigenic zones, we have identified 4 different scenarios. And these virtual scenarios contain a relatively small number of detailed simulation used as a replacement for real data, and they will be used to feed the virtual sensor environment. For example, for training purposes or for demonstration purposes like this, we are plugging the sensor platform from the real sensors to a so-called virtual sensor platform, which is simply a scenario player playing the virtual scenarios. These up to now, we have 4 scenarios. We call the first one Ispra 2, which is an earthquake with a low uncertainty triggering a tsunami. Then we have West Cyprus, which is an earthquake with high uncertainty triggering a tsunami. And then we have West Anatolia, which is an earthquake felt at the coast, not triggering a tsunami. So there are different situations. And of course, we have a 4th scenario, which is based on a historical earthquake event from 1303. So for this demonstration, we select the first one, the Ispra 2 virtual scenario, and you can see that here there's the location of the earthquake event, which is definitely triggering a tsunami. You can see the isochrones, so that's the wave propagation that is calculated for this virtual scenario. You have these red triangles, which are sensors, which are tide gauges, which are measuring sea level, and we also have, in this case, we have green rectangles, which are buoys also sensing sea level measurements. And you can see that we are already including sensors which are not available. For example, the buoys are not available, but we are still considering them because there might be sea level measurement stations available in the near future or in the future. Maybe not this massive, but maybe 3 or something like that. The concept is that we divide the workflow in upstream, decide and act, and downstream. And the upstream is the sensor data, additional context information, and dynamic analysis. The decide and act part is the decision finding based on context analysis, evaluation of alternatives, and the initiation of the warning. And then we have the downstream, which is the generation of customized warning information, the dissemination via different channels, or maybe the control of actuators. We will focus right now on the decide and act part because the decide and act part is connected with the user interface. We call this user interface command and control user interface, which is the key component for the operator on duty, because this user interface has access to the services working in the background. For example, for the upstream, for getting the sensor information, for example, and also for the downstream to send the warnings. We have a task-oriented workflow to manage a tsunami threat, which is starting with monitoring, then going to the forecasting, then the message composition, and finally the dissemination of the messages. The workflow is supported by so-called perspectives. So we have, for each part of this workflow, we have a separate screen, which is called perspective. And the monitoring perspective is used to track running events in the analyzed region. We have the forecasting perspective, which is used to analyze simulations. We have the message composition perspective, which is used to prepare and send warning messages. And the dissemination perspective is used to observe all sent warning messages. When you look at the workflow, the perspectives are opened one after the other within a tsunami threat, so that the operator is guided to manage this threat. The monitoring perspective. As you can see, the central part of the perspective is a map with relevant information about the region which is monitored, and you also have surrounding views, so some subparts within this user interface which are showing additional relevant information. And then we have the forecasting perspective. You can see that the map is moving a bit away, but still is a central part, because now there is displayed a forecast, a selected forecast from several simulations selected, and you also have now, where the map has been before, the so-called sensor timelines, where you can, or where the operator of duty can compare the real measurements with the selected pre-computed simulations. The message composition perspective itself is used to identify the affected areas and how hard they are affected, and to generate the first initial warning message, which then is translated into custom-tailored warning messages to registered users, and this dissemination then can finally be traced by the operator and checked if, for example, some message delivery has been failed. So we're switching now to the live demonstration. Okay, so you see the monitoring perspective, and you see some movement in the left bottom view, which is the so-called sensor events view, and Matthias already has started the playing of the events, and you can see that there is a map. You have the buoys there, you have the tide gauges there, and the information that is played into, yes, and you have also on the right, you have the so-called map elements view, so you also can select certain elements and maybe move in or just display where they are. And what you can see here, we have already received some data, and right now, just some seconds ago, we received the first earthquake event, which is coming from, right now, from the virtual seismic network. It is also directly displayed in the map. You can also select the earthquake event in the map elements, and you get in the information view on the right bottom further information on the updates of this event, because the first measurements will be like a magnitude of 7.4, and then with new seismometers, this value is justified. Now we can use this information or this event, which is displayed here, to trigger the simulation system in the background. And the data from the seismic system now is used to get information from a pre-computed matching scenario or simulation database. And in this case, for example, we have, just for demonstration purposes, almost 400 pre-computed simulations. And from these 400 simulations, just for demonstration purposes, they're selected 7 or something like that. And so the operator can now switch to the forecasting perspective, which takes a bit, because from these simulations, for each of these simulations you have in the sensor timelines view, you have colored graphs, and now the operator on duty is able to analyze these simulations in detail if one of them fits better than the other, and can select this simulation or one simulation for the dissemination. As you can see, the map still can be used to see that there is, for example, buoy 6 and buoy 7, buoy 12 and buoy 13, which are close to this earthquake location, and so we can move to the sensor timelines view to buoy 6, for example. The operator then can zoom into this timelines, and you see that there is a black line which represents the sensor data, and now the operator is enabled to make comparison between the pre-computed simulations and the real sensor data. So he can switch on and off some of these simulations, and he can also weight or rank them. The ranking of these simulations then is collected in the ranking or weighting view, which is next to the clock in the middle of the top of the screen. And there the operator on duty can select one of these simulations so that this simulation then is displayed in the map. We have, of course, to mention that we still have, at the left bottom, we have the sensor events view, and whenever new events come in, the graph is, or the sensor data, the black line is updated within the sensor timelines view. Another thing is we are each diagram now looks a bit weird because it's pressed a lot, but this is because of the resolution of the beamer. So when we have a real setup, then we are using wider screens and you have a better time series and a better view for comparison. So Matthias now is selecting one of these simulations. We get the information, what this simulation is thinking or what has been computed, how the wave is propagating. And we see that there is one red line which is highlighted a bit more than the others. And this is the first wave that is expected to be at that location right now. And the operator on duty now can select this simulation to start the so-called Tsunami warning wizard, where in the background we switch to the message composition perspective, and the wizard opens, and because the simulation that has been selected has a lot of pre-computed tsunami forecast points, which is too much for the operator to compare it manually. The affected areas are now generated based on these forecasts of estimated time of arrival and estimated wave height. So the operator then says generate areas. In the background, again, a service is triggered, and the administrative units of Turkey in that case then are colored in different colors, which might be red, orange, yellow, and blue, based on how hard they are affected. When the operator on duty is going to the next step, and then there are a lot of specific information which only can be changed by a trained operator, and these are parameters which belong to the so-called common alerting protocol. So here's one screen where we see that we are using standards, and that the standards, that the parameters within this standard can be changed in a way that the systems or the registered users which receiving the CAP message finally can be triggered in certain ways. We just leave it at these default values and go to the next step. And we can add a screenshot, for example. We have again some parameters which belong to the Common Alerting Protocol standard, and then we say finish, and an initial message is sent to the services in the background, and in the background we have information logistics, which then is looking into a database, looking what kind of information has to be sent to what user over which channel, and also in what language and what information should be included there. We have heard some sounds. So, for example, Matthias has received an SMS message.
So I just received 2 warning messages. So our system sends them to a service provider, commercial one, and I received 2 warning messages because I'm registered to 2 areas in Turkey. I cannot show it, unfortunately, but we could show you also fax and email dissemination. So this is kind of an email client. We are also running on one of our virtual machines. And here we see a generated warning email. So in the background, we have a complex system where users can register to certain areas which they are interested in. And in this case, a user, it's a mock-up user, of course, it's a rescue service, is registered to 2 Turkish areas, and or more, but these 2 are affected. And he receives a warning message with the estimated time of arrival in UTC, and also with the maximum wave height for these areas, for the coastal areas. Okay, these are just some example texts in our database, and then you also see the attached screenshot from the command and control user interface. And the second attachment for this email is the CAP, the Common Alerting Protocol, XML. So if this rescue service or whichever organization it is receive this warning message, it can also be used in their internal systems, which might also be capable of understanding this CAP message, which is an international standard widely used in Canada, USA, and Australia. Okay. So then, in the meantime, also a fax message was sent. So we have no fax system here, but we have a mock-up client on our laptop. So I can just show you the PDF which was generated. Okay. So here are some details like the ID and some fields of the CAP standard categories, response type, message type, and then we have severity, urgency, and certainty for the criticality classification. And then we have again the warning message. I think we have different regions in this fax. Again, we have the estimated time of arrival of the first wave and then the maximum wave height, quite high in these regions.
And then we can also go back to the command and control user interface, where we have a fourth perspective, which can be used by the operator to trace if these messages which have been shown right now really have been delivered. And you can see at the left you have an overall summary, and it's green. It means everything has been sent. And on the right, we have just for the email channel, for the fax channel, and also for the SMS channel, you can also get further information. And depending on, or it depends on the providers you use and what kind of status messages they deliver back to the system. We have also intermediate states, which, for example, say that the message provider or the dissemination provider, which can be a SMS provider, a cell broadcast, or something like that, can say that we have been able to contact this provider, that the message has been processed by the provider, successfully processed by the provider, and sometimes it's also possible that you get feedback from the provider that the message really has been delivered to the message consumer.
So the first message we sent was based completely on the simulation, on the forecast, but the operator has also the opportunity to send warning messages or all clear messages manually. So we can, so I will clear the map, and now we could use one of our tools to select coastal areas. So in this case, here's the opportunity to select on the country level, on the first administrative level, or the second level. So we choose the second level. So then these areas, oh, it's not working. Okay, now these areas are selected, and on the right side we have the message generation form, where the operator can manually create a message. So he has to select the message type, like an all clear message, for example. Then he can add the areas we have created right now. Then he can add further information, and for example, you could also create a new snapshot of the map and use this as attachment. and then he can disseminate this message, which is then processed by the background services, and depending on several user settings, new messages are generated or not. Yeah.
So, okay, that's the presentation of the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin and Matt. We've got a question there.
Hello. My question is it possible to have a system like this working in places where you have no boys operating? So you are not having inputs or how the real tsunami is advancing? Is it possible?
Yes, but of course then you are missing the opportunity to make comparisons on the real measured data. So you get to the forecasting. So what you have, of course, is, I guess, the initial earthquake information. But when you have no tide gauges, no buoys or something like that, then you still can, based on the earthquake event information, you still get a subset of the pre-computed matching simulation database simulations. And the operator then has to decide on his knowledge. He should be trained or she should be trained, and then can select one of these pre-computed and pre-selected simulations and can continue with the dissemination of warning messages.
Sorry. And the buoys you are presenting there are buoys administrated by Turkey, are not DART buoys administrated by NOAA or...
So currently there are no buoys, because we want to show that, because it's an European funded project which is addressing needs maybe in 2015 or 2020. So we think of that it's possible to have maybe in 5 years buoys which are not that expensive and can be maintained much more cheaper than right now. That's the idea behind it, that we are coming with a system that is already capable of providing the IT software system for including buoys when they are there.
And if it would be DART buoys and the Pacific, for example, they could be included in this? Or you will need special permission? So
theoretically, yes, but we also have to say that we are looking a lot of interoperability, so we try to be compliant to standards, for example, the OGC Sensor Web Enablement Standard. So when the DART buoys or a post-processing unit of the DART buoys is able to translate it into the standards, then theoretically it just can be plugged in.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add that the system is designed not to only address today's needs, but also the future needs in this sense. And there can be many things said about these components, but one very important element there is that the tracking of the message dissemination. Within the NAMTWS activities, we conducted 2 communication test exercises. And these communication test exercises are considered to be the regular activity of the candidate Tsunami Watch providers. And it's very important to have all dissemination mechanisms, statistics, and evaluation integrated into one system to ensure that you are actually be able to sending the message and evaluate who is getting the message and who is not. Thanks.
We'll have one last question with Ian.
Yeah, I was just wondering, very interesting. How is your system compare, for instance, with systems like the one in Japan, for example, or if you're familiar? What's the difference comparing, for example, to other currently existing systems?
I think the main difference is that it's one system. So it's one system which is based on several components, and we try to provide the required and necessary information in one application to the operator. So I've been at JMA in 2009, and it's a warning center with a lot of systems running there. And that's the same. We have been in Jakarta in Indonesia, and there is also not only one system running. So, and of course, this is just another system which is addressing other needs than the systems currently in place. But nevertheless, we try to have one system that is providing all the information which are necessary, so that you don't have to use 3 or 4 systems that are maybe have interoperability problems or something like that.
I think maybe we'll do other questions later, Louis. Maybe you can ask them.
I was very interested in the comparison of your system with the Jakarta system that is being done by the German, the GITEUS,
Yep.
the paper that was not presented. And I wondered if you've done any comparison between your system and that system.
So the JITEUS system as well has been. So it's a project that has been funded by the German government, and the leading coordinator or organization has been the GFZ, the German Research Center for Geosciences, and the JITEUS system has been after the 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean. Has been started in 2005, and it was, I would think, the first big initiative of the GFZ. And the JITEUS system has been the first system, and we have successor projects. So we then had the DEUCE project at also with other partners, but the technical coordination, for example, was again provided by the GFZ, and now we have the TRIDEC project, which is the third project in this line, and the GFZ again is the coordinator. So it's just one of 3 projects, and we try to improve the system more and more.